wanted to share an article I came across on alternate.org entitled, "Is Trump Anti-Semitic? Here's what the evidence shows." I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to offer some comments. But I just want to state up front that I do not agree with a lot of the perspective of this website. But there's a reason why I'm sharing this article. And again, I'll comment on it after I've read the article. Is President Donald Trump anti-Semitic? After a shooter killed 11 people and wounded 6 others, only 6, not 6 million or something, at a synagogue on Saturday, many observers said there was a clear connection between Trump's own bigotry and the devastating massacre. Others responded by disputing that Trump can reasonably be accused of anti-Semitism. So which conclusion is correct? Here's the case that the president's rhetoric has often been, and knowably so, anti-Semitic, and likely to stoke bigotry toward Jewish people. During his presidential campaign, Trump repeatedly used imagery and tropes known to be associated with anti-Semites and propaganda against Jews. Now notice here it's saying imagery and tropes known to be associated with anti-Semites and propaganda against Jews. It's not even saying that the things he said were actually anti-Semitic, just that these are tropes or imagery that are associated loosely with people who are alleged anti-Semites or whatever. Just wanted to point that out. On July 2nd, 2016, he tweeted an image of Hillary Clinton next to a Star of David against a background of cash. When this was criticized, he deleted the tweet. The image originated on a neo-Nazi forum. Trump also retweeted other neo-Nazis during the campaign, including an account called @WhiteGenocideTM. Trump quickly deleted the Star of David tweet, but later he defended it, saying it was a sheriff's star, not a Star of David. This implausible excuse actually makes the original offense worse, because it sounds like an obvious wink and a nod to anti-Semites. Someone who made a genuine mistake by promoting Nazi content would sincerely and profusely apologize. Later in the campaign, Trump used vague and ominous rhetoric to describe nefarious banks trying to undermine the working class. So what are you saying? Are you saying that nefarious banks are not trying to undermine the working class? I mean, I was involved in Occupy Wall Street back several years ago, and I know they were very much against the banks. So if you were part of Occupy Wall Street movement, does that make you an anti-Semite too? While it's of course not out of bounds at all to criticize the banking industry, Trump's use of global conspiracy tropes came very close to echoing racist myths about Jewish people. He said, "It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. Just look at what this corrupt establishment has done to our cities like Detroit, Flint, Michigan, and rural towns in Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, and all across our country. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global interest powers, her special interest friends, and her donors." Well, I guess judging from that so-called anti-Semitic meme that he retweeted or whatever, it sounds to me like he has a pretty good idea who those international powers are. And I don't know that he's necessarily wrong. The question is that actually anti-Semitic? So it goes on. The trouble is that, as has so often been the case this year, the language Trump has chosen to employ carries with it heavy cultural baggage, wrote historian Yoni Applebaum at the time. And whatever he intends, there are Americans who will find it frightening to hear these images revived, and others who will feel emboldened by their use to go where Trump himself did not. Trump did not heed such warnings. He never seemed to take them seriously. When called upon to denounce figures like the former KKK leader David Duke, he did so with seeming reluctance and annoyance. He preposterously claimed that he didn't know anything about Duke. And as author Jonathan Weisman pointed out Sunday, Trump's last ad of the campaign featured sinister images of Lloyd Blankfein, Janet Yellen, and George Soros, all Jewish. Yeah, they are, aren't they? Isn't that curious? While warning of global special interest. In reality, Trump has no objections to the Blankfein or Yellen, the chairman of Goldman Sachs and the former Fed chair. He doesn't? Really? It sounds like he does. And shouldn't he? Shouldn't everyone? So it's hard to see why they would be singled out. No, it's not. Because they're evil. Except for the fact that their images play into the racist trope of a Jewish global conspiracy. Yeah, that's the only reason, isn't it? Before his entry into politics, there were also reports of Trump's anti-Semitism. A book by John O'Donnell reported Trump saying, "Black guys counting my money, I hate it. The only kind of people I want counting my money are short guys that wear yarmulkes every day." As president, Trump's disturbing behavior has continued. There have been the major press relations flops, such as former press secretary Sean Spicer distorting the history of the Holocaust, and a Holocaust remembrance statement that neglected to mention Jewish people. I'm actually not familiar with that. I might have to look that up. It sounds kind of interesting. When white supremacists and neo-Nazis marched in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017, they chanted, among other racist screeds, "Jews will not replace us." Trump famously said of this group's class with counter-demonstrators that there were some very fine people on both sides. Well, I think most people have kind of looked into Charlottesville a little bit, and when Trump said that there are some very fine people on both sides or whatever, there's no indication that he's actually talking about actual neo-Nazis. And it's not like everyone in Charlottesville was a neo-Nazi. And as far as the counter-protesters, what percentage of them were communist? So it isn't as if there were these peaceful counter-protesters there to peacefully protest against a group that consists of nothing but neo-Nazis. There probably were some people in that group that I wouldn't want to be associated with. But there's definitely people in the Antifa counter demonstration or whatever that I wouldn't want to be associated with. And there probably were a lot of people on both sides that were mainstream right-wingers or left-wingers that more than likely I could get along with. So I think there probably were assholes on both sides. And there probably were good people on both sides. But after looking at it, it really does look to me like the worst people were on the quote-unquote counter-protester side. That's just my opinion. In recent weeks, Trump has been stoking fears about the caravan of migrants in Central America, despite the lack of evidence that they pose any threat to the United States. Again, I disagree here. I think mass immigration does pose an existential threat to the United States and to every European nation, or to just any nation for that matter. Mass migration of foreigners into any nation is a threat to that nation's continued identity and existence. One of the conspiracy theories Trump has touted about this group is that they might be receiving funding from Democrats or other shadowy actors, including, once again, George Soros, which is true. George Soros has been funding a lot of these caravans, and a lot of other people like George Soros have been really active in the push to flood the US and other European countries with massive waves of immigrants from the third world. So that's not something that's unfounded. I mean, they say this stuff openly. It's not hard to see. And so can we not comment on George Soros because he happens to be Jewish? Can we not? And a shocking number of these people just happen to be Jewish. So can we not talk about what's going on simply because a shocking number of these people happen to be Jewish? This claim feeds into a pernicious theory on the racist far right, which holds that Jews are driving immigration to the U.S. in an attempt to destroy the country's way of life. This theory appears to be the motivation behind Saturday's attack at a synagogue, and Soros was one of the targets of a series of mail bombs allegedly sent by an extremist Trump supporter this week. At this point, let me just say, I condemn violence of that sort. At the same time, I think it's perfectly legitimate for people to want to defend their country and their people against the nefarious actions of foreign people who are acting in their own interest and not in the interest of your people or your nation. And it can be maybe a tricky question to ask at what point a certain amount of violence might be justified in the name of self-defense. Those examples cited, I'm not saying that was justified, but I'm just saying at what point are you justified in using violence to support your people and your nation? I mean, Israel certainly feels justified in, launching rockets and, bombing civilians and all this kind of stuff, allegedly to defend Israel and to defend Jews. So we can't have a double standard there. Either it's moral and just to use violence, if necessary, at some point to defend your nation and your people, or it's not. We can't have it both ways, though. Nevertheless, Trump laughed as his supporters chanted, "Lock him up," about Soros at a White House event this week. Yeah, well, what's wrong with chanting "Lock Soros up"? What's wrong with that? Sunday night, the Anti-Defamation League called out this type of behavior. If your candidate is attacking Soros, or the globalist, or a member of Congress from your party is embracing Holocaust deniers, you must stand up and tell them to stop. Why? Why? What's wrong with attacking George Soros? What's wrong with attacking someone who is working to destroy your country? I don't know what this, embracing Holocaust deniers thing is about, but regardless of what your views are about, what happened in World War II, some people have done their research and come to conclusions that don't match up with, what mainstream sources tell us about what happened. And we either have freedom of thought and freedom of speech, or we don't. I recently had a video banned on YouTube because I talked about my views on this topic. And anyone that saw that video before it was taken down will know that there was absolutely no hatred or anything like that in the video. I was just giving my thoughts on a controversial topic and explaining some of the reasons why I've come to the conclusion that I have. But I guess I better not say much more than that, or this video's just going to get banned too. But I don't see why we can't talk about that, or why we should ostracize people simply for having an alternative view of history. Defenders of Trump have offered several responses to this ample evidence of Trump's anti-Semitism. First, they typically point out that Trump's daughter, Ivanka, is Jewish. She converted after marrying Jared Kushner, who the president also appears quite fond of. However, this only speaks to a very specific kind of prejudice. Prejudice can manifest in many different ways, one of which is personal distaste for every and any member of a particular group. It's true that Trump does not appear to have this form of prejudice against Jews, since by all accounts he loves his daughter and son-in-law. However, there are other forms of prejudice. Yeah, but that's the one that matters, isn't it? I mean, when we say that someone is racist, to me what that means is they hate people for no other reason than that they are black or white or Asian or, Jewish or whatever else. If that's not the case, then I don't really consider you racist. Like, that's the only thing that matters. Do you advocate hatred and violence against a group of people or against individuals for no other reason than that they belong to that group, or don't you? Right? I mean, if you are just talking about Muslim terrorists, you don't hate all Muslims, but you recognize that Islamic terrorism is a problem and you're talking about that, I don't think that makes you an Islamophobe. And if it does, then how come the author of this article is not an anti-white racist? Because isn't that exactly what he's doing? He's talking about, Charlottesville and neo-Nazis and so on. And why is that not an example of anti-white racism if we're going to turn around and say that criticizing specific actions on the part of specific Jews or groups of Jews, if we're going to call that anti-Semitism, when clearly Trump does not hate all individuals who are Jewish simply because they're Jewish, as the author of this article himself acknowledges? Why the double standard is what I'm asking. So if we're going to call Trump an anti-Semite or whatever, or a racist, then people that write articles like this should be called anti-white racist by the exact same logic, by the exact same standard. Another factor defenders of the president bring up is his support for Israel and his friendship with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But while this relationship appears genuine, it is, again, not proof against Trump's anti-Semitism. As Les Field, an anthropology professor at the University of New Mexico, has pointed out, it has sometimes been in Israel's interest to ally with anti-Semitic forces. Ironically, strident anti-Semitism in the United States and Europe is increasingly cloaked by political and economic alliances with Israel. A seeming paradox the Israeli government under Netanyahu has been all too ready to facilitate, he writes. Well, isn't that an interesting point to make? And I would like people on the far right to consider that. Because a lot of people on the far right are saying that because Trump has been pro-Israel or friendly toward Israel in many ways, this somehow means he's a puppet of Israel or a, Zionist puppet or whatever. I don't agree with that. I actually agree with the author of this article that Trump's partial conditional support of Israel in certain ways does not prove that he's not a so-called anti-Semite. Not the sort of anti-Semite that would be an actual anti-Semite, someone who hates all Jewish individuals simply because they're Jewish, but it seems to me that Trump is aware of what's going on in the world and who is behind it. And the undeniable thing that a shocking number of these individuals have in common, I do think that Trump is pretty red-pilled. So according to the logic of the author of this article's author, I don't think we should dismiss Trump as a Zionist shill. I think he is on our side. Often, anti-Semites and other racists argue against any international diversity. In this way, they may value Israel's desire for a strong Jewish state because it serves to separate the Jewish people from the rest of the world. Now, it's funny to me that the author of this article just kind of stops there and doesn't comment on the double standard he's applying. He uses terms like anti-Semites and racist for people that don't want their country to be turned into some kind of, melting pot experiment. But he doesn't condemn Israel for its desire to remain a Jewish state. Why are you a racist on the one hand and an anti-Semite on the one hand, but, on the other hand, no one is saying that you're a Jewish supremacist or anything like that if you want Israel to remain a Jewish state? It's just shocking to me that the author doesn't even try or feel the need to try to justify or explain this double standard. He just goes over it like no one's going to notice it. Finally, some might point to the fact that the worst anti-Semites, such as the suspect in Saturday's massacre, criticized Trump for not being anti-Semitic enough. Yeah, I actually agree with him here. It bothers me a lot when I see people on the right criticizing Trump for not being anti-Semitic enough. I think if you read between the lines, I think he knows what's going on. I think he's on the right side of things. But no, I don't think he is actually an anti-Semite, as I would define the word. And I wouldn't say that I am either, even though I've frequently been labeled as such. But this doesn't exonerate Trump from accusations of anti-Semitism any more than the existence of slaveholders vindicates the racist who only argued for separate but equal treatment of black Americans. That's a very strange argument to me. I guess he's saying that the fact that you're not a member of the most fringe extreme doesn't mean you're still not bad, But okay. There's a long and clear history of Trump endorsing, using, playing into, and winking at anti-Semitic propaganda and bigotry. It's also clear that even when this is pointed out, Trump's efforts to distance himself from this form of hatred are half-hearted at best. The most generous reading of the evidence is that Trump carelessly spews hateful rhetoric and racist tropes against Jewish people, and then fails to back down out of self-righteousness and arrogance. But even on this reading, Trump is guilty of careless disregard for bolstering racist propaganda, and he values his own pride over standing up to bigotry. So like I said, I just wanted to share that article because I found it interesting. I also kind of interjected some of my thoughts and comments as I was reading it. But to me, there's sort of two sides to this that I think are both wrong. And then there's the middle view, which I hold and which obviously I think is right. So on the one hand, you have the kind of attitude expressed by the author of that article, where he's trying to say that Trump is an anti-Semite and that's a bad thing. But even the author acknowledges that Trump is not, clearly not, an anti-Semite in the sense that he hates all Jewish individuals simply because they're Jewish. He criticizes people like, George Soros and Blankfein and Janet Yellen and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Rosenstein, along with people like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. It's not Trump's fault that a shocking number, actually, of these people just happen to be Jewish. That's not Trump's fault. So can you not criticize any of them simply because they're Jewish? Does that make you an anti-Semite? Hypothetically, let's say there were a group of members from a particular identity group. I won't specify which one, it's just hypothetical. But let's say members of some minority population or another managed to gain vastly disproportionate power over the financial system, the central banks, Hollywood, the media, huge lobby groups. And let's say they acquired a bunch of wealth and power and influence, and they used that to push policies and so on that were harmful and destructive to their host nation. Now, not every member of that minority group would be implicated or guilty by association. But would there be anything wrong with acknowledging that the people who made up that cabal came vastly disproportionately from a particular minority group? And if you call them what they are, does that imply that you hate every member of that group simply for being a member of that group? No, you're calling out and identifying specific individuals from within a group who have formed sort of a elite cabal, and I don't see a problem with that. And like I said, the author of that article and other people like him, they're frequently talking about, white supremacists and neo-Nazis and all the rest. So, does that mean that they hate all white people? If not, then why the double standard? And if so, why don't we condemn them too? Right? It's one way or the other. But then, like I said, there's kind of the other extreme too, and that's kind of on the far right, where, on the extreme far right, where you will find people who I wouldn't want to associate with, and who I do think it would be fair to actually identify as, anti-Semitic or racist and so on. People who do actually hate individuals for no other reason than the fact that they belong to a particular race or ethnic group or religion or whatever. And I think it's mostly those people who accuse Trump of being a Zionist or a puppet of Israel or whatever. And I think they're misguided, just like the people on the other side, like the author of this article, are misguided. It's like these people think that unless you hate all members of a group, simply for being a member of that group, that somehow prevents you from being able to recognize and call out the behavior of specific individuals from a particular group who are working together, conspiring together to destroy your country. I think there's a middle ground, and the middle ground is what I advocate, basically. So, I don't hate Muslims, for example, but I think that organized Islam is a threat to the West. I think, obviously, Islamic extremism and terrorism is a threat to the West and to the Middle East, quite frankly. So I think that Islamic extremism is bad for most moderate, peaceful Muslims. And on the, let's just call them reptilians, there is an elite group of reptilians who are part of a global international conspiracy. And that doesn't mean I hate all reptilians. I think regular reptilians are kind of the victims of these people just as much as anyone else. And I think that the behavior of these elite reptilians stir up a certain amount of hatred and animosity toward reptilians as a whole, and then they are kind of the victims of that backlash. So, no, I don't think it's anti-reptilian to talk about what these reptilian elites are doing. But anyway, I think I'm going to end there for now. I'm going to have a whole lot more to say. But let me close by saying I'm really disappointed at how few people that follow me and subscribe to me on YouTube have followed me on my BitChute channel. I can't emphasize this enough because I know for a fact that my days on YouTube are limited, especially if I keep talking about things that I really, really, really want to talk about more and that I think are absolutely crucial to talk about. I can't talk about a lot of things openly and honestly here, and my channel will be banned. I almost can promise you. Unless things turn around soon, I don't think there's any reason why it should be. I certainly don't feel that I promote hatred or violence or anything that, should legitimately be classified as hate speech or anything that should be censored or banned. But, because of the people who kind of control YouTube, the reptilians or whatever, look, it's just, I'm not going to be on YouTube very much longer. I really believe that. So, follow me on BitChute. All of my links are going to be in the description box below. I need you to subscribe to my channel on BitChute. Otherwise, I don't know when. I don't know if it's tomorrow, next week, a month from now, whatever. You're going to just notice that my channel is gone. All of my videos here are gone. So I'll also say if anyone likes some of my videos and they want to download them and re-upload them or mirror them or something, I don't have any problem with that. As long as, you give me credit, maybe you put my links in the description box, don't monetize the video, or if you do, at least send me some love on PayPal or Patreon. Unless I get banned from PayPal and Patreon like a lot of other people have too. But check out my links in the description below. Follow me on BitChute. Subscribe to my channel on BitChute. And I highly encourage you to look up other YouTube content creators that you like. A lot of them, you're going to find them on BitChute too. I highly recommend you follow them there as well too. This platform is getting so restrictive. We've got to find a better platform. We've got to withdraw our support from YouTube. And the other thing I'll just add real quick, of course, donations help. A great way to support my channel, obviously, would be to make a one-time donation through PayPal, or you could become a supporter on Patreon. Basically, every time I upload a video, you decide how much you would like to pledge in support per video. And last but certainly not least, you can download my music if you like it, or if you don't and you just want to buy my album just to support my channel, you can do that. My link for that is in the description as well. And of course, you can also support my channel by liking the video, sharing it, because YouTube is certainly not promoting my channel and my content, or other similar content from other content creators that have a similar perspective on certain things. It is absolutely getting buried. I'm not getting a lot of new subscribers or viewers because of YouTube. Basically the only way more people are going to hear my videos is if you share them. So hit the like button, share, subscribe. That helps me out a lot too. And I'll have more to say soon. Thanks for listening. Peace.